when my daughter told me, I called. I was in shock, asked her a few questions, and I called Joni for help. And I said, I'm going to go to the police. And she said, no, bring her to me tomorrow morning, and then we'll go to the school. I was restless and not happy because I wanted to go to the police for some action. But I thought, okay, this is wise counsel. I'll listen.
My first knowledge of any abuse was in November of 2020. And Suzy called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool. And she told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend. And so she called me and asked me, would I go to the school with her? And I said, absolutely. So I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school. And of course, you know, I was there to encourage, and as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Did Joni Lamb commit a crime failing to report child abuse? The controversy surrounding Joni Lamb, co-founder and president of Daystar Television Network, stems from allegations made by her son Jonathan Lamb and his wife Suzy Lamb. They claim that Joni actively discouraged them from reporting the essay of their daughter by a family member. These accusations have raised serious legal and ethical questions, especially in light of Texas mandatory reporting laws.
Hello, and welcome to What the Talk, the platform dedicated to exploring spiritual themes, delving into the enduring truths found in God's Word, and encourage you to live a life grounded in His teachings. Thank you for joining us.
Texas law is clear. Anyone with knowledge or reasonable cause to believe that a child has been abused or neglected must report it immediately to law enforcement or Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, DFPS. Let's listen to what the law says.
State of Texas. Child abuse reporting requirements. Report child abuse, it's the law. Texas law requires that any person suspecting that a child has been abused or neglected must immediately make a report. If there is an emergency, call 911 and then call the DFPS Texas Abuse Hotline at 1-800-252-5400. You can also make a report online. Professionals must make a report no later than the 48th hour after first suspecting a child has been abused or neglected or is a victim of an offense under Section 21.11, Penal Code. A professional may not delegate to or rely on another person to make the report, Texas Family Code, Section 261.101. Professionals are not required to follow up their oral reports with a written report as they were in the past. Professionals include teachers, nurses, doctors, daycare employees, and others who are either licensed by the state or work in a facility licensed or operated by the state and who have direct contact with children in the course of their job, Texas Family Code, Section 261.101. It is important to make the report as soon as possible. The more time that passes between the incident and your report, the more difficult it is for CPS to conduct an appropriate and thorough investigation and gather the information needed to protect the child. Over time, bruises can heal, physical evidence may disappear or be obscured, memories may fade, and children, parents, and other individuals may change their minds about what to say to CPS. In some situations, you may be aware of a family's ongoing problems over a period of time before you begin to suspect that the situation has worsened into abuse or neglect. DFPS encourages you to report if you think that a child has been abused or neglected. You are not expected to prove that abuse or neglect has definitely occurred. Delaying your report to check the situation or to gather more information can result in more serious harm to the child.
Southern Methodist University SMU also has this. I'm going to put the sources in the video description.
Duty to report suspected child abuse in the state of Texas. Texas Mandatory Reporting Law. Texas law requires anyone with knowledge of suspected child abuse or neglect to report it to the appropriate authorities. This mandatory reporting applies to all individuals and is not limited to teachers or healthcare professionals. The law even extends to individuals whose personal communications may be otherwise privileged, such as attorneys, clergy members, and healthcare professionals. Therefore, all SMU employees should be familiar with Texas law pertaining to reporting suspected child abuse or neglect. Section 261.101 of the Texas Family Code mandates that anyone who suspects child abuse or neglect must report it immediately. The report may be made to 1. Any local or state law enforcement agency, or 2. The Department of Family and Protective Services. All persons are required to make the report immediately, and individuals who are licensed or certified by the state or who work for an agency or facility licensed or certified by the state and have contact with children as a result of their normal duties, such as teachers, nurses, doctors, and daycare employees, must report the abuse or neglect within 48 hours. Texas law broadly defines abuse and neglect so that every action in which a child's physical or mental health or welfare has been or may be adversely affected is potentially covered. The statute explicitly excludes an accident or reasonable discipline by a parent or guardian that does not expose the child to a substantial risk of harm. However, if there is a question whether conduct constitutes abuse or neglect, always err on the side of the child's safety and report the incident. A person acting in good faith who reports or assists in the investigation of a report of child abuse or neglect is immune from civil or criminal liability. Failure to report suspected child abuse or neglect is a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by imprisonment of up to 1 year and/or a fine of up to $4,000. Merely reporting the incident to your supervisor or manager is insufficient.
Jonathan and Suzy Lamb have alleged that when they informed Joni about their daughter's abuse, she not only failed to report it, but actively discouraged them from doing so. They claim Joni was more concerned about protecting the family's reputation and the Daystar Television Network than ensuring justice for the victim. Joni Lamb, however, has denied all allegations, calling them an attempt to destroy her family and claiming she did not cover up or fail to report any abuse.
So time passes until November. That evening, when she, in very graphic detail, she just said, she started off with, he put, his hands and showed me the places on our body.
Yeah.
This was the most unexpected blow of my life. And I kind of just sat on the stairs, like, is my little girl saying this? She's 5. How could this even enter her brain? And then first she showed me one part of her body and she goes, and also over here. I remember those words, and also, it's like a second knife. And I did what I knew to do at that point. Well, first I asked her, I said, where is this happening? Is this happening at the school? Because her world, again, was home, school, and Daystar. How could it be Daystar, right? It had to be the only place that I don't know, maybe school. Which was a church, actually, a little pre-K. Like, is that, and I have to say, I asked a lot of questions because I needed this information. So I said, was it at school? And she's kind of like, and I said, was it a boy? Was it a girl? Were you alone? I started throwing things at her and she goes, boy. I said, okay, how big? Now, the pre-K, the kids there are age 3 to 5, but I still asked how big, how big, and she said taller than daddy.
Which means that this narrative that's going around that you thought it was a boy at school, that a boy at school did something, that was never part of the story. You never thought it was a boy that was her age, or you still kind of...
I was thinking this is maybe security, bathroom, someone who cleans bathrooms, maintenance. I was thinking somebody that works there.
But you never thought it was a child, another child, or maybe...
It wasn't a possibility in my mind because they're age 3 to 5, but I was willing to keep an open mind in case as a teacher that has a son.
Because you didn't know for sure.
Didn't know. So I immediately called Joni and I said, okay, so I'm going to go to the police because Jonathan hadn't come home from work. And so she said, no, hold on. I'm going to come with you to the school tomorrow and we'll talk to the teachers. I was frustrated. I don't like wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
You're like ready to act.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, there's one narrative that Joni has, another narrative that you told me, which, by the way, I will say, has been consistent with me. And I have seen some changes in Joni's story. But let me play that, and then we'll talk about it.
My first knowledge of any abuse was in November of 2020. And Suzy called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool. And she told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend. And so she called me and asked me would I go to school with her. And I said absolutely. So I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school. And of course, I was there to encourage, and as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter.
Of course, yes.
And so that was the incident that happened. And yet, what's being written is just taken out of context. That was the incident that happened in 2020, and I was there. And Suzy actually called me to go there.
Okay, so the word about you covering up, there's no truth to that.
When I started hearing that, I thought to myself, what am I covering up? I've covered up nothing. And so I never covered up anything.
Night, my child told me that evening, it would have been around 5:30ish in the evening, when my daughter told me, I called. I was in shock, asked her a few questions, and I called Joni for help. And I said, I'm going to go to the police. And she said, no, bring her to me tomorrow morning, and then we'll go to the school. I was restless and not happy because I want to go to the police for some action. But I thought, okay, if this is wise counsel, I'll listen. So she says, we'll go to the teachers. The next day, it was very hard. And to give context onto why I called Joni, just quickly, we would go sit in coffee shops for hours. We were on the phone for hours. She would tell me, this is how you manage the family crisis, all the relationships. Every single thing I did was her telling me what to do. Every single thing, all the time. So it was the most natural thing. Anyway, so when she says that, Jonathan comes home. I'm upset. I'm just crying in bed because, I got the worst news. But my kid seems okay. The next morning, she tells Jonathan to bring our daughter over so she can hear the same
Joni
details.
says, bring your daughter over to the house. I want to hear from her.
Yeah, she does. So I bring her over to her house, and
because on the interview with Marcus Rogers, she said they wanted me to talk to her, which that interview's deleted now.
I wanted her to talk to the police. I wanted her to talk to a detective.
Yeah, so my mother, she wanted to basically hear from our daughter what had happened, what she had told Suzy. And so I took her over to my mother's house. Not thinking much of it, obviously. When I did that, she went to speak to her alone. And again, I wish I had been there just because I wanted to see how the conversation went. But I just
You trust your mom.
Trusting son.
Why would you not trust your mom at this
My mom
point?
wants to hear from her, so I let her go into the house. I remember I was waiting in the car, and she speaks to her. She basically says that she confirms everything that she told Suzy about the abuse. And then we go...
Joni says to you.
Wait, so she does confirm everything she told you. So this was before she was like,
there's no
wouldn't
family
say
member.
She said on the Marcus Rogers interview, she said
she already
wouldn't
wouldn't
talk.
tell anything.
She said she wouldn't talk.
She didn't say
That's a
anything.
lie.
She heard anything.
That's
But
a
she
lie.
told us that she confirmed everything that she had told Suzy about the abuse.
And that's why she went to the teachers, because she had that information.
And I have to say, you guys
If authorities determine that Joni Lamb knowingly failed to report abuse, she could face 1. Criminal charges under Texas mandatory reporting laws, 2. Civil lawsuits from the victim's family, 3. Damage to her reputation and the Daystar Network, potentially affecting viewership and donations. I think the last one has started to happen already. Currently, the Colleyville Police Department has reopened its investigation into the abuse claims, meaning legal action is still a possibility. So, what happens next? If evidence supports the claim against Joni Lamb, she could be prosecuted for failing to report the abuse. If authorities determine there is insufficient evidence, the case may be closed without charges.
While no formal charges have been filed against Joni Lamb at this time, Texas law does not allow exceptions for clergy members when it comes to reporting child abuse. If the allegations prove true, she could have violated the law by failing to act. For now, the case remains under investigation and the public awaits further developments. Let me know what you think about this case in the comment section below. You can also let me know what you think about Joni and her actions after it was reported to her that the child had been essayed. Let's keep the conversation going. Well, that's all I have for now. Please like the video, share the video, and if you have not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Share this message so that many people can know what's happening. I will see you in the next video. God bless.